Okay, we're going to talk about attachment now and behaviour and trauma. So what is attachment? You might have heard this term in relation to child development, but what does it mean to you? So I want you to put me on pause and just have a think, maybe make some notes. What words spring to mind? What does attachment mean to you? Okay, so some of the things you might have said is belonging, bonding, love, relationships, safety, security, and it is all of those things. A couple of quotes here. Attachment is a child's emotional bond with the person or people who care for them. The quality of attachments shape emotional and physical development and behaviour. Okay, so attachment is crucial. Attachment is formed right from the off, and prior to attachment theory kind of coming to light, basic needs of children were down to food, shelter, warmth, that kind of thing. But actually the attachments are a basic need of children. We're all born with the need to form relationships, with the need for closeness, with the need for attachment. And all of our children are. For a lot of our children, that has been disrupted or not developed as we would hope. So how do children build secure attachments? So when we think about a secure attachment, a child has a need. Okay, so a child experiences a need. That might be, I'm hungry. Okay, so a child has this need, it's hunger. I'm talking about a newborn baby. So a newborn baby, I feel hungry. This feeling comes upon them. They have no understanding that this feeling is hunger. All they know is it doesn't feel nice. And the newborn baby starts to have this feeling, it doesn't feel nice. They need to tell you. Okay, so they're feeling stressed and anxious. They need to tell you. How do they tell you? They cry. So all of a sudden, I feel hungry. Ah! What the child is saying is, feed me, make this better, please make it go away. The carer satisfies that need. So what the carer does is they feed the child. But not only are they feeding the child, they are interacting with the child. They're saying to the baby, there we go. Were you hungry? Oh, goodness me. That's better. There we go. There we go, beautiful. Okay, they're interacting, they're bonding, they're nurturing, they're creating that feeling of safety. And then the child feels calm and content. And every time we do this, every time we go around this cycle of responding calmly, of responding empathically, of interacting with the child, of nurturing the child, of talking to the child, of calming the child, we're building security, trust and attachment. And what will eventually start to happen is the child will experience a need and they will not feel stressed or anxious, because what they've learned is this person makes it better. I've got somebody who makes it better and makes this nasty feeling go away. Oh, so this feeling's coming again. Oh, I need to tell somebody, but I know it's going to be better, so I don't need to get so cross or so stressed or so anxious about it, because I know I'm going to be fed. For children who develop insecure attachments, it works very differently. They have the need, they feel stressed and anxious, but those needs are not met. And so they continue to feel stressed and anxious. And our children just live in a constant stressful and anxious state. Now, attachment can be broken down into 3 categories. There's lots of other categories out there, but for the purpose of training and when it comes to looked after children, we tend to focus on 3 main types of attachment. The first one is the ambivalent attachment. So children develop ambivalent attachments when sometimes they have their needs met and sometimes they don't. So mum, dad, whoever is my main carer, one day they might be available, they might make me feel better, and they might make it all go away. The next day they might not. This can happen for all sorts of reasons, mental health, substance abuse, but for whatever reason, caring is very inconsistent. And this child starts to think, this baby starts to think, when I shouted that day, they made it better. When I shouted this day, they didn't. So maybe I need to shout louder. So you will get the baby that cries constantly. As they're growing up, they will be very, very clingy. Because what they will feel is that the only way to keep you close to me is to hold on to you. They will be very anxious about themselves, about you, about your relationship. And this attachment style will transfer to whoever is caring for them. They will just be very, very anxious and clingy. The next attachment style is the avoidant attachment style. The avoidant attachment style happens when the child's needs have not been met. Okay, now they might have had a bottle shoved in the mouth, but they certainly haven't had any of the, oh dear. What they might have had is, stop crying. Can't deal with this, can't deal with this. Okay, the message that's been given to that child is emotions are bad. When you're feeling sad, when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling upset and you tell me by crying, that's bad. Emotions are bad. It's that stiff upper lip, you know, that the parents that just expect their kids to man up. You've fallen over, get up. I recently went to a child's birthday party and there was a young boy of 4 or 5 on the bouncy castle, and there was another boy of about the same age who stood on his chest, pinned him down and punched him in the head about 4 times. And the lad on the bouncy castle was so upset, he was crying. I ran onto the bouncy castle, gave him some comfort, and I said, where's your parents? And he was shaking his head. And I said, is your mum here? He said, no. I said, is your dad here? He nodded. And eventually I got him to take me over to his dad. And we went over to his dad, and I said to his dad, I've just come over to tell you, he's just had his, he's just been punched to pieces on that bouncy castle, and he was really upset. And his dad said to me, no, they all play fight, it's fine. And I said, no, what I saw wasn't play fighting, he got a beating. And his dad's response was, well, toughen him up. You're all right, aren't you? And the little boy with tears in his eyes went back onto the bouncy castle. Now the message that boy is getting is, don't show your emotions, man up. And that's one of the reasons that we see, particularly in males, these soaring suicide rates. Because there's messages that are given to children, don't show your emotions, it doesn't get you anywhere, don't ask for help, just look after yourself and stay tough. So the child who's avoidant in their attachment style will be very independent, will not want you looking after them, will struggle to show their emotions, will have lots of stuff going on inside but will not let it out. And sometimes it will come out in big bursts, but then they will feel very unsafe because of that, and they will have to bring it back in. And our third attachment style is the disorganised attachment. The disorganised attachment style comes from children who have experienced frightening caregiving. So their carers have frightened them, abused them in such a way that they need to do whatever they can to stay safe. So with these 2 attachment styles here, these children have developed patterns to keep themselves safe, strategies. So the ambivalent child, I'm going to cling to you, I'm going to get as much of you as I can, that will keep me safe. The avoidant child, emotions are not safe, so I'm going to keep everyone away, I'm going to keep my emotions away, that will keep me safe. The disorganised attachment is what it says on the tin. I'm not going to be organising any of my strategies. I'm going to jump from strategy to strategy to strategy, depending on what situation I find myself in and how unsafe I feel. I'm going to do whatever I need to do in whatever situation I find myself in to stay safe. Our brains are all about keeping us safe. Safety is the key. So when children are behaving in a certain way, we need to think about why are they behaving like this. The bottom dollar is to stay safe. I'm going to talk to you about how the brain develops very briefly. So we start off with our brainstem. In the womb, we start off with a brainstem. The brainstem is responsible for our heart rate, our breathing, all things like that. The next part of our brain to develop is this, our emotional brain. And our emotional brain is responsible for our emotions and our responses to things. So the newborn baby who feels hungry, it triggers their emotions, they cry, they let us know. Located within the emotional brain is what's called our amygdala, and our amygdala is our brain's alarm system. This is the part of the brain that scans for threat and looks out for danger and lets us know when we need to protect ourselves. The next part of the brain to develop is this part, the thinking brain, is what we're going to call it. There will be lots of different terms that are used, but for the purposes of pre-approval training, we have a brief, succinct, simple explanation, and we refer to emotional and thinking brain. So the thinking brain starts to develop. Now the thinking brain has billions and billions of connections like these. And what we need to do is strengthen these connections. So we strengthen these connections by using them. So for example, if this connection is regarding communication and language, the more I talk to a child, the more I interact with a child, the stronger this will be. This is a child strapped in a high chair, left in a buggy, very rarely interacted with, the connection is going to look very different. And the other thing that strengthens connections and builds this part of the brain is positive interaction. So every time a child has an experience with their caregiver that makes them feel happy, that makes them feel good, they release positive chemicals into the brain, oxytocin, and oxytocin strengthens these connections. Now, why is it important for these two parts of the brain to work together? Because that's what's called emotional regulation. Okay, now when in your first year as a foster carer, we run a course called Attachment, Trauma and Brain Development. So we look at this in much more detail over 2 days or 3 short days. But what I'll tell you very simply is, what happens when these two parts of the brain work together is our emotional brain goes like that and our thinking brain goes like that. So we flip our lid, the thinking brain puts the lid back on, and that's what keeps all of us walking around, managing life, managing our emotions. So if somebody at work really annoys me, I might flip my lid. I think, I really want to have a go at them, I want to shout and scream at them, I want to do this. My thinking brain comes in and says, right, you're at work, you're a professional, it's not okay to shout and scream at people at work, so just deal with it in a calm way. It puts my lid back on, it enables me to think through my actions, to think about what I'm going to do. When somebody cuts me up at a roundabout, or doesn't indicate at a roundabout, I flip my lid, I want to shout and swear at them, I want to follow them. My thinking brain comes in and says, oh, hang on, you've got a 2-year-old in the car, you need to stay safe in the car, you don't want to crash the car, so take a deep breath and let's drive off. Okay, I'm able to do that. That's because both parts of my brain work together. A lot of our children are not able to do that because our children have experienced trauma. Now by trauma, what we mean is repeated stressful events in early childhood. So for our children, when we experience stress, we release cortisol into the brain. Cortisol is okay in small amounts, that's okay. But repeated amounts of excessive cortisol released into a child's brain damages the connections. It attacks the connections in the brain like this. And so what they lose the ability to do is this. And what we see in our children is the lid's flipped and they can't put it back on. It's down to us, the adults, to put it on for them by responding calmly. Okay? So if a child flips their lid and goes, oh for God's sake, I can't get it, and we go, hey, will you just calm down? We're matching that, we're not doing that. Okay? If we respond to children by saying, I'm sorry you're feeling like this, I'm sorry it's so difficult, we stay calm, we give them nothing to argue with, then we will eventually help them to put the lid back on and we'll do it together. Okay? And we need to do that over and over and over again until the child's able to do it for themselves. Now we might be talking about a teenager, you might have a 15-year-old and you have to put their lid on for them over and over and over again until a point where they feel able to do it for themselves. Because what we're doing is, we're going back to the newborn baby. The newborn baby flips their lid and can't put it back on for themselves. They need us to say, oh, there we go, sweetheart, there we go, I'm here, you're safe, I'll look after you. That's what the 15-year-old needs, or the 4-year-old, or the 7-year-old, or the 12-year-old, however old your child is. They need you to put the lid back on for them until they can do it for themselves. Because as we've seen, if we get it right with a newborn baby, they start to put the lid back on for themselves. What I've got here is an image of 2 brain scans. These brain scans were done of 2 different children of the same age. This brain scan was done of a child who'd been brought up with a secure attachment, no issues, that was their brain scan. This brain scan was taken of a child who'd been severely neglected, locked up, lots of emotional, physical harm. What I can tell you about these brain scans is they are completely different. And this isn't the only example that's out there. There's loads of examples out there of brain scans like this where they've compared brain scans. We're not working with the same children. So strategies that you would use with this child, such as time out, taking things off them, docking their pocket money, grounding them, using a step, all those kind of things are blanket responses that are generally, when people like Super Nanny are talking about them, they're talking about this child. Children who have the ability to think. Children who have the ability to think, I'm really angry, but I don't want to lose out on my dance class. I don't want to have my pocket money taken off me, so I'm going to calm down. This child has not got the ability to do that. So if we use responses or techniques such as, I'm taking that off you, go to your room, you're grounded, you're losing pocket money, it's not going to go in because they haven't got the ability to do that for themselves. So they can't respond to expectations and consequences when they're up there because there's no way of putting the lid back on. This was a study done on the looked after population in England in 2011, and it found that no children looked after had a secure attachment. So what I would say as a result of that is no children who are looked after should be approached in the way that we would approach this child with time out, etc. So while we are forming our early attachments in our early childhood, the early years of our life contribute to what's called our internal working model. And we all have an internal working model. Our internal working model looks at our experiences, gathers information of what's going on, and forms for us a view of who we are, who adults are, and what this world around us is. So, for example, if we had a child who'd been brought up with a secure attachment, who'd had all their needs met, had lots of love, lots of nurture, lots of positive experiences, their brain might be giving them messages that they are a lovable, important, funny, cute person. It might be telling them that these adults, these big people, are kind, caring, safe, fun people. It might be telling them that the world is an exciting adventure, it's safe and it's interesting. Now, if my brain is giving me these messages, I'm all set. I might go into situations that feel unsafe and I might be like, oh, can I do that? Dare I do that? Yeah, it's okay. I'm okay because I've got these safe people there. And I'm capable because I'm a good person. This child might come across adversity, so they might have difficult situations, they might move home, they might have a death of a relative. But the overriding thing is their brain is telling them they're really good people that can manage stuff. Adults are safe, they're there to be trusted and I can trust them. And the world's a good place. So this is very general, but some of the examples of things that the brain might be telling children who've experienced trauma and abusive situations, they might have the message that they are stupid, worthless, unlovable, invisible. These adults are scary, nasty, untrustworthy, cold people. And the world is a dangerous, dark, empty and bleak place. And for a child to have those messages in their brain, you are going to see very, very different behaviours to this child. So, and reactions to things. So think, for example, if this child is told off, you're not all of these things and they're not all of those things. So they might respond, think about what you've said, and we might move on. If you tell this child off, you might be reinforcing all of this. You might be reinforcing that I am all of this stuff. Okay? Your job is to challenge this and to challenge this. But remember that that will feel unsafe at first. So it's a long journey to heal this. There's a quote that the key to healing trauma is relationships. However, often the thing that caused the trauma is relationships. So it's a really big hurdle to get over, to get children to trust you enough to allow you to change this for them. And for you guys, connected persons carers, you're already part of the way there because our children have a relationship with you. So what we want you to do with these children is give them therapeutic caring. Therapeutic caring is all about managing the emotional brain, not taking responses personally. Okay, so if a child displays negative behaviour, shouts things at you like, I hate you, you don't care about me. It's about you being strong enough to be able to say to yourself, that's not about me, I can't take this personally. Whatever that is, remembering that their brain is different. I've put there, significant change might not be achievable for years. It's about fairy steps. We're going to have to chip away at this stuff. Because remember, the brain, we can't just go and it changes. We need to slowly help that brain to heal and make the changes that it needs to make. We need to remember that our children have all experienced loss. A lot of them have lost part of their family. And a lot of our children will feel relieved to be safe, but also will be on red alert. So for the child with the secure attachment, their amygdala is in their brain scanning for threat, but they don't need to be hypervigilant. They can relax and know that their brain's going to look after them. For the child who's experienced trauma, their amygdala is going 10 to the dozen all the time, and they're very aware of it. So they will be scanning for threat all the time. That person just looked at me, is that unsafe? That person's reading that book, what does that mean? Everything could be a threat. So we need to remember, children's responses, children's reactions is all about keeping them safe. It's all about safety. That's what their brain is trying to do. Behaviours that you may see, shutting down feelings. So the avoidant children will shut their feelings down. Demanding your attention. And what I would say is, if a child is attention seeking, turn that round and call it attachment seeking. And if a child needs attention, then please just give them attention. Once upon a time there used to be a school of thought that attention seeking children, we should ignore them until they stop. If this child is saying, I need attention, because they might have an ambivalent attachment, then what we need to do is meet that need. They might be trying to control you. So for a lot of our children, they will feel very out of control. Someone has come along and said, you're not living here anymore, you're living here. Right, so you're not going to that school anymore, you're going here. This is how often you'll see your mum. This is how often you'll see dad. This is how often you'll see your granddad. This is how often you'll see great-grandma. And Auntie so-and-so, you won't be seeing her anymore. They feel very out of control. And some of our children, their brain gives them the message that the only way to stay safe is to stay in control and control everything and everyone. So again, we meet needs. If a child's hungry, you feed them. If a child's cold, you make them warm. If a child needs attention, give them attention. If a child needs power and control, give them some power and control. And the way that we can give children power and control is to give choices. So we see this a lot in toddlers when they start to develop independence and a sense of identity. I've certainly got it at the moment with my toddler. I'm constantly giving choices. Do you want the blue bib or the orange bib? Do you want the orange or the pear? We're not saying to the child, you decide everything and you control the house. What we're saying is, I'm not controlling you, but here's your choices. And we also need to be aware of children's development and where it sits in different areas. So just because a child's 8 doesn't mean they're 8. A child might be 5 in this area, 10 in this area, 15 in this area, and so on. So we need to think about which area of their development we're appealing to and how it fits with that. So what can you do? We've already talked about some of the things you can do. But you can ask yourself these 4 questions constantly. So these questions are taken from one of our courses called TCIF. We do have a 1-day introduction course to TCIF. It stands for Therapeutic Crisis Intervention for Foster Carers. And the full course is 8 days. Now, within TCIF, we look at stopping children from going into crisis. But if they do go into crisis, what can we do? And we talk very clearly about it's your responsibility. So the first thing you can ask yourself is, how am I feeling? It's really important that we're able to get a handle of our own emotions, our own feelings, and to manage our own self-awareness. So if I'm feeling stressed and I don't acknowledge that and I don't try to do anything with that, I'm going to railroad in and probably deal with something in a really negative way. We need to think about, what does this child feel, need and want? They're displaying this behaviour, but I can't work out why, but I know it must come from somewhere. How is the environment affecting the child? Is there anything around us that I could change to make this different? Instead of just saying, calm down. Because what we know is that our children can't calm down. And then based on how I'm feeling, what I think is actually going on for the child, and what's going on around us, I'm going to decide the best way to respond to this. So if we just respond without thinking, we're jumping in, we're going to mess it up. If we step back and think it through, we're going to respond in a better way. When we are, this slide says safer discipline, and I don't like the word discipline because it sounds very strict, very authoritarian, and actually our children need nurture and support. But what we do need to do when we're trying to manage or deal with behaviour is recognise the painful history and the painful experiences. And as a foster carer, you cannot use any physical punishment or you cannot threaten children, cannot humiliate children, and also you cannot use food as a consequence. So you cannot withhold food, you cannot withhold activities, and you cannot withhold contact. Okay, that's just a no-no. You are not permitted to do that. So our children need you to value them for who they are. So you might have a child that's displaying really difficult behaviour, you're really struggling with it, but they need to know that you still value them and that they are still a good person for who they are. They need positive attention and lots of one-on-one time. Children need that positive interaction, positive experiences to build the brain. Children need to be touched. Safe touch releases positive chemicals into the brain, but we need to touch at a level that the child can manage. Okay, you might start off with a high five, you might then build up to cuddles. They need to be able to play, learn, relax and develop. Now relaxing is easier said than done for a lot of our children, but hopefully we can get them to that point. They need you to have positive expectations. So if we give children the message of, oh, well, you're going to mess it up anyway, they probably will. Excuse me. They need fair consequences that are followed through. So we need to think, when it comes to consequences, about potential natural consequences. If a children plays up in school and they're pulled aside and humiliated in front of their friends, I would say for a lot of our children, they don't need you to do anything else at home, i.e. ground them, take something off them. That will have been enough. That will have upset them enough, have been painful enough for them at school without anything else coming along. And we need you to be reflective. So you're not going to get it right every time. I don't get it right every time, but you need to be able to step back and say, do you know what? I didn't deal with that very well. This is why, this is what I'm going to try and do in the future. And apologise to the child. A lot of people have an issue with apologising to children, but it means so much to these kids if you can say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. And you're not expecting an apology in return, you're just saying, I'm sorry.